Let's do it. All right. Da 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 da. Maybe that could be our new theme music, J-Lo. Da 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 da. Oh, a harmony. I love it. What are those things like when you were younger and you'd do like rounds and it's like da 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 da. Anywho.
We'll work on that.
We'll work on it. Do you know what, J-Lo? I am so glad that one, you and I can sing so beautifully. It really does help the podcast. But that you and I also did something for the benefit of our listeners, which we love to do. We love to help out those who love listening to Flash Drive every week. And we fast-tracked a couple of economics degrees for ourselves. So we are now unofficial fiscal experts. I mean, it feels pretty good.
Look, ask us anything. Monetary policy. We're all over it.
We are.
Keep your heart out, Saul S. Lake.
So I love it. Well, also, I mean, to be fair though to us, J-Law, I think we've done pretty well at trying to explain a lot of complicated jargon over the past few weeks. We're going to try and do it once again in today's episode, but we've done well because my financial literacy started with this documentary from 1996.
Georgie, you better yell! Show me the money! Show me the money!
Show me the money! We love a documentary. We love a pop cultural reference as well, J-Law. But look, in all seriousness, there has been a lot of money talk going around. We've been wrapping our heads around it, so you, dear listener, do not have to. You are welcome, so strap yourselves in. I'm Georgie Tunny.
And I'm James Law.
And this is Flash Drive. J-Law, what a week. Before we dive into all of the finance stuff, all of the money meanderings of the RBA, both major parties, how are you?
I'm good. It's a shame that we're not in the same room today. So for people who are listening, Georgie's in Melbourne, I'm in Sydney. We're far away from each other, but
I know.
we couldn't not do our Flash Drive.
Oh, J-Law, I think we could be arrested if we
People
didn't
would
do it.
riot.
They would riot. They would. There'd be protests. I mean, it's just better for everyone's civil liberties if we continue on and record Flash Drive every week, which we are going to do. A lot for us to discuss and delve into and try and work out when it comes to interest rates. We will get there. We're also going to be discussing the defamation trial that's absolutely captured the world, and that's what's going on between Johnny Depp and his ex-wife Amber Heard, plus all the glitz, all the glamour, all the non-glamour from the Met Gala. I cannot wait to have that chat with you, J-Law, about your favourite looks and everything that's going on from that amazing red carpet. But first, in case you've been living under a rock, or maybe you're making a concerted effort to try to not consume so much bad news, if that's you, well done. J-Law and I don't have that luxury.
If only.
If only. But the RBA this week raised the official cash rate from 0.1 to 0.35%.
Given the outlook for the economy and for inflation, further normalisation of interest rates will be required.
And more on the way. Great news keeps on coming, J-Law. So, look, everyone was expecting a rise because inflation is so high, 5.1%. I don't think anyone was really expecting the rise to be that much that quickly. And, of course, it's in the middle of an election campaign. So, obviously, the key players, the power brokers, they're going to have some thoughts and feelings. Here was a few of those.
No one has a crystal ball.
He's getting desperate, isn't he, Mark?
It's not about politics.
Scott Morrison saying he's not focused on the politics is like Homer Simpson saying he's not focused on the donuts.
This is a guy who gets up in the morning and what he has for breakfast is political.
You guys always see things through a totally political lens. I don't.
Okay, so break that down for me, J-Law. Like, what have you made of the major power brokers' responses to the rate rise this week?
Look, it's a really interesting position that Scott Morrison is in, right, where they're trying to make themselves out as the economic safe pair of hands. But I think a lot of people will be looking at where they're at with their dollars and wondering whether the government is delivering, right? Petrol prices are up. Inflation is up. You've just copped an extra payment for your mortgage, and that's only going to get higher. Wages are not going up. So we're in this position where nobody is really feeling that well off. But the government is trying to say, stick with us, stick with us. We're the ones who know how to do this. But if people are like, well, why should I stick with you when I'm struggling here? I think there's a bit of dissonance there. I don't know how people will be able to reconcile that. What the coalition is trying to do is like, yep, things are bad, but they're going to be much worse under Labor. They can't be trusted on this stuff. And I think that probably in the electorate there are a lot of people who feel that way about Labor. And it'll be a question of whether Labor can convince people that things will be better under them. I mean, the thing about all this, though, that's important to know, so yes, there is a cost of living crunch going on across Australia, but we know from the RBA and from the banks that a lot of people who have a mortgage have been really smart during this record low interest rate environment. They've been putting extra money away. They've known that this wasn't going to last. So a lot of people have got significant buffers in the amount of money they've got to pay back for their mortgage. So a lot of people aren't in that bad a position for their mortgages, and they probably can cop a bit of extra. But if things keep rising as they are and there's no relief in sight, then that's maybe when things will start to get a bit more hairy. And that's what the Prime Minister said this week.
Australians have been preparing for this for some time. Throughout the course of the pandemic, we have seen them double their buffers on their mortgages. But importantly, we've also seen them strengthen their own balance sheets in preparation for what they always knew would not be the continuation of extraordinarily low rates from the Reserve Bank.
Okay, so if we take that at face value, J-Law, because I do think there are official figures out there saying that, backing up what you're saying, backing up what the Prime Minister's saying, and that some Australians, they're actually in a pretty good position for these rate rises. And also, I think we knew and we have known that this is coming, right? So they even may have made even extra steps towards that preparedness, because the ultra low interest rate of 0.1, like that's emergency measures. And I know that interest rates haven't technically risen in like 11 and a half years, but that was always going to come to an end, and it would have come a lot sooner if there hadn't been a pandemic. But if that's the coalition's standpoint, that things would be markedly worse if Labor was in power, how does Labor actually change that mindset? I know that that's the $1 million question, right? But we're all talking about it all depends if they can do it. What I'm asking you is, how do they do it? Because I'm sure that Anthony Albanese is listening to Flash Drive, and he wants to know as well.
Listen up, Albo. Well, look, I think that the Labor line on this has been pretty good. What they've been saying is that the Prime Minister likes to take credit for all of the good economic figures and take none of the credit for the bad. So he's willing to take credit for the really good unemployment numbers, but not for things like inflation, and he'll blame that on overseas pressures. So they're like, their line that they keep saying is that he takes responsibility for nothing.
Yes, which I think is, as a slogan, I'll give it to them. They have been committed to it. They have said it at every single opportunity, so much so that we can readily go, oh, that's right, no responsibility for Scott Morrison. Got it. Like, they have been very, very, very mindful of making that concerted effort to keep that messaging going.
Yeah, and it's not hard to just go back a few years and find contradictory statements from Scott Morrison on these issues. Like last time he was in opposition, there's like a grab of him saying kind of the opposite of what he's saying now, and saying that like, yeah, interest rates are your responsibility, and yeah, inflation is, your responsibility. But now he's like, oh no, circumstances are different. So and that's the thing about Scott Morrison, is like you can go back and find him contradicting himself left, right and center, because he's so adept at just kind of ducking, weaving, saying a different thing when the circumstances change. Like, I think it's fair to say he's not a conviction politician. He's a poly who is very pragmatic, and so when he's trying to make these arguments, you can very easily, rebut them with his own words. Who do you think is making a better argument? You know, I feel like the coalition's a lot more on the defensive than it was in the beginning of the campaign. Part of me thinks that this week that maybe there's been a bit of that this interest rate bomb is a bit of a game changer, and that it provided there's no major stuff ups from Labor over the next fortnight, maybe that could be enough to get them over the line. What do you think?
Do you know what? I would have said probably 2 days ago I was with you when this interest rate announcement just came out, and I've gone back and forth on this because I do think that Scott Morrison, you're right, is just as we've talked about, he's the ultimate campaigner, but he is so pragmatic when it comes to economic matters in particular. So when this interest rate announcement was made, I found it really interesting the way that the two parties handled it. Scott Morrison had a press conference straight after the RBA's press conference, and it wasn't outside. It wasn't on the campaign trail. It was inside. He was in front of the Australian flag. He was looking very prime ministerial. Whereas Anthony Albanese sent out would-be Treasurer Jim Chalmers, which at that stage, I thought that was a weakness for Labor, because I was like, you really do kind of want the leader there, right? With their face being like, no, this is it, this is it, this is it. Then there was the National Press Club debate yesterday between the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, and Jim Chalmers, the Shadow Treasurer for Labor. And I have to say that I thought that Jim Chalmers performed or outperformed a very well-known campaigner and usually a good performer in Josh Frydenberg. So now I'm seeing it more as a positive that it's Jim Chalmers as the face of. But then I've got this quandary, right? Because then I'm like, okay, but he's not the actual leader.
Yeah. Look, and I think that's been happening a bit with Labor, where Chalmers is a very good performer. He's got some knockout lines and he delivers them really well. And I think he did a lot of that during that press club debate where, maybe what he was saying didn't have a lot of substance and there wasn't a lot of detail about what they would do differently on the economy, but he had some kind of knockout lines that Frydenberg didn't have a good response to. He
did. Let's just have a listen to some of the responses and rebuttals to each other, because a lot of that debate yesterday, a lot of that debate at the National Press Club, they seemed to spend a lot of time trying not to answer questions. However, they had a great time in talking about what each other's side was doing.
On the issue of what I fear from this government, I fear that they will continue to ignore this cost of living crisis. And I fear that this government will continue on the path that they've created for the best part of a decade now.
My greatest fear is that if Labor got over the line, they would revert to their natural instincts to tax more and to spend more. Instincts that were on full display when they thought they had the election in the bag last time.
Yeah, you can see a bit of the flavour of the attack that they were trying to make. It's interesting, a lot of these debates have been, like, there haven't really been knockout blows on either side, and I feel like this is what a lot of voters are feeling as well, where I think they'd love for someone to just, like, come out of the gates and just take this election by the reins and make our choice a bit easier, where I feel like certainly people I talk to are just uninspired by both sides.
Yes. That is the overwhelming thoughts and feelings that I'm getting, the overwhelming sentiment. I mean, I was in a cab the other day and as per what usually happens, what do you do? Oh, I work in TV. And they're like, oh, what do you think about these pollies? I mean, what are they going to do? I have no idea who I'm going to vote for. And this is just, old mate cab driver who's there being like, I'm going to have to really think about who I vote for because I just don't like either of them. I'm like, okay, great. But it's this sentiment that we've spoken about previously, in that Aussies tend to elect people we don't like, ultimately.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that puts these two parties with still, two and a bit weeks left before polling day. And I'm with you. I don't know what's going to happen or what needs to happen for someone to really take the forefront here and make it be like, well, it's ours to lose. Because I don't think either party's been that strong.
I tell you one thing that needs to happen. Albo needs to do his homework better. So, you know, there was that obvious real bad gaffe in week 1 where he didn't know the interest rate or the inflation rate. Just today, he's had another one of those ones where he was asked by a journalist what his policy on the NDIS is, and he simply didn't know it. And he had to go away, check his notes, and come back and answer it. And I feel like if he doesn't kind of get on top of those kind of specifics, that just gives the coalition so much ammo against him, because their argument is he's untrusted, untested, untrustworthy, not across the detail where the adults in the room give us another go, right? That's what they're trying to say. And it's like, if Albo doesn't know this stuff backwards, journos can ask you anything. You got to have it ready. And I don't feel like Scott Morrison gets caught in those kind of gaffes as much. So, you know, if he doesn't get on top of that, that could be the thing that gets away from him.
Would you rather a leader who can answer the tough questions but maybe isn't actually answering them but looks like he's answering them, or a leader who admits to not necessarily knowing the answer at that time, going away, coming back? What's a worse look? I think it's the latter, to be honest.
Well, look, that's a good point, you know, but I think that you've got to – politics is a performance, right? You know, there is the policy and getting that right, but it's also about winning hearts and minds and appearing to be on top of things, you know. So they might have the most rock solid policy in the world, but if you can't sell it and you can't distill it for the voter, then you're in trouble. And I think on the substance of stuff, I don't know that one party is like smashing it over the other. So then it comes down to the sell, and Scott Morrison's better at that.
He is. He really is. Who's also good at the sell? I'm not sure if you saw this, J-Law, but there was a Batuta Advocate post saying that I think put everything in perspective of this week, because there's been two sides from my undertaking, and it's been split into demographics when it comes to age, most likely. So younger Australians desperately trying to get into the property market, just being like, this is impossible, or people who do have a mortgage and now facing really high interest rates and like, oh my God, how on earth will we pay for this? And then, dare I say, the boomer generation, the older generation, who's like, well, you shouldn't really have even got these big loans. What were you thinking? Like, what was happening? Why on earth would you do this? And I just have to mention that the Batuta Advocate absolutely nailed it. It was like, you know, I was able to buy a house with 17% interest rate when it was cheaper than a RAV4. And I just thought that really, I was like, where's that substance? Where's that coming from? Bring me that realism.
Right. Look, do you want to hear my rant on housing policy just real quick?
You know I do.
Well, so both the Coalition and Labor have, thrown a bone to first home buyers.
Yes.
The Coalition has a policy where you can essentially buy a home with a smaller deposit. Labor this week announced one where they will essentially go guarantor with you on a loan and have a 40% stake potentially for those on lower and middle incomes.
Yes, have Albo at the table, as Scott Morrison's been saying. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, both of those kind of are like, all right, they're doing something, sounds nice, but, you know, people who are really struggling to buy a home need to know that both of those policies are going to do nothing to fix the problem. You know, the market is overheated. Giving people a leg up to get in is only going to push prices up. Both of those policies will do that. We need to demand of our governments to have a bigger think about dealing with the actual things that drive property prices up. And they are things about supply of homes. They're about planning and development. And, you know, I'm probably the only person willing to say this in Australia, things like negative gearing that were roundly voted against at the last election give people who are already well off a huge leg up. And, you know, these are the things that really need to be looked at if we want our housing market to be fairer. End rant.
Where's the platform? Where's the placard? Where's vote for J-Law? Where is it? When is it? What's happening?
Well, no one's going to touch that stuff anymore, because it didn't work for Shorten.
I mean, you don't have to win, J-Law. You can just run.
As if. Thankless job. As if.
For our dear listeners, J-Law just looked at me there with absolute horror, being like, I could not think of anything worse. And to be fair, I couldn't either. I just don't know. Every single time I forget, and then we're in a federal election campaign and I'm like, who's coming in? Yeah, that's why.
Answer the question, Georgie. Answer the question.
That's a gotcha question. How dare I will not answer it. You can Google it. All right, let's turn our attention to things that are happening over the other side of the world now. And over the past few weeks, there's been a little court case that has been capturing everyone's attention. The defamation suit between Pirates of the Caribbean star Johnny Depp and his ex-wife Amber Heard.
I'm all of a sudden realizing that the worst thing has just happened to me that could possibly happen to you. I realized that I wish so much he had said he was joking.
I opened the bottle and I poured myself a shot and drank it. Miss Heard was flinging insults left, right, and center, and she then grabbed that bottle and threw that like that, leaning over, the fingers like that, and she threw the large bottle, and it made contact and shattered.
God, did he just hit me? No, I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want this to be the reality. I didn't want to have the man I was in love with. I know you don't come back from that. I'm not dumb. I know you can't hit a woman. You can't hit a man. You can't hit anyone. You can't just hit somebody because they...
I honestly didn't feel the pain at first at all.
J-Law, we've been covering this trial on Flash in our daily news flashes. Each day there seems to be another new disturbing piece of testimony, a new disturbing allegation on both sides, whether it be Amber Heard that's making the allegation or whether it be Johnny Depp that's making the allegation. For obvious reasons, it is hard to chat about this case and not have it be like a gossip fest. But I think that's why lots of people are drawn to this, because yes, it's a serious case between two incredibly high profile people with all of these, really gory, gritty, nitty details that everyone is kind of like, what? That just seems so unbelievable because they're so far removed because of their fame. But at its heart, it is a dispute talking about domestic violence, but it's not a criminal case. So my ultimate question, I guess, J-Law, after all of that, is can you tell me why it's in the public interest? Why do so many people care about this? And why should news sites like ourselves be reporting on it and not just leave it?
Well, you can't put this stuff back in the box, can you? This is being published on a live stream, and, it's probably the most tuned into case since OJ in the States. People are frothing on it. Look, they're big stars, they're big names, and these are big allegations. So, my view is we don't turn away from this sort of stuff. It's about domestic violence. It's about people's reputations. It's about the truth. That's kind of what this is about. And, it has been shocking. There's been allegations of rape. There have been allegations of drug use and all kinds of things. And I don't know, I guess my main takeaway from it is I find it a bit baffling that Depp would do this, because I don't think it is restoring his reputation. I think in the beginning, when it was his side of the story, I think lots of people were like, oh, wait, there's more to this than we were told. But now Heard is testifying, and then you're hearing the other side of the story again. And because of the way it is, it's this kind of civil trial, you can just sort of say whatever you want. And at the end of the day, they'll just weigh it up. And it's not like a criminal trial where there's sort of a higher standard of proof. You can just kind of say, this is what she told me, this is what I heard, this is what I say, without much extra evidence. So in the end, I think that neither of them will come off looking good.
So Johnny Depp brought this case against Amber Heard. He's essentially suing her for $70 million because of a 2018 article that she wrote where she claimed that she was a victim of domestic violence and domestic abuse. And Johnny Depp was never named in that, but he directly feels that damaged his reputation and that it hasn't been the same since 2018. It's affected his work. And you're saying that potentially this defamation, instead of helping rectify that in his mind, is actually an own goal, because it's sort of airing out these grievances that really do not paint either party in a spectacular light. I agree with you in that. However, at the start, I think it's changed the longer that the trial has gone on. So at the start of the defamation suit, I was with you. I was like, this is so bad. Both of these people just seem really toxic for each other. Like, I don't know, individually, maybe they're not great humans. Together, they were just a terrible, terrible union. By all accounts, again, has absolutely no idea personally, but by all accounts, this is what I'm basing it off. They're both of their testimonies so far. But the court of public opinion is also very interesting, because I think that at the start, everyone was like, oh, wow, what is happening? These are explosive claims. But then there was a switch in like week 3 or 4 after Johnny Depp gave his testimony. And I really feel that the fans, or even everyone who was just sort of like looking at this on the outside, turned against Amber Heard in a way that was like, well, she's insane. And the story became more about how toxic she was rather than what was going on the other side, which I found interesting just in the, societal world that we live in. And I was like, I'm not necessarily surprised that people have fallen onto the man's side, but for better or worse. But it's just, I just thought it was interesting to note that's happened. And I'm not sure, because I now think that it actually is helping Johnny Depp.
Okay,
like this is helping him, and that he could then get work. And I don't think it's necessarily not helping Amber Heard. She may get work again as well. But I think this is the only thing that Johnny Depp could have done, because, yes, Hollywood and the world itself usually is pretty okay with forgiving pretty awful things that men in particular have done. But on this platform, airing these grievances where both of them look pretty shithouse, it's, I think, a good thing for him, for his reputation, regardless of what actually happens, because she's countersuing him for $100 million as well.
Yeah. And look, there's still a bit to go. So she's done, 1 day of testimony. She'll be back in the stand again.
Yes.
So it'll be fascinating to see where it all shakes out.
Do you think that it could have any, I say real world effects, with no disrespect to them, because I know they're living in their real world, but I mean, do you think that it will have any effects when it comes to, your second cousin and their dispute with their partner, or, other things, like people just bringing the awareness about domestic violence into everyday conversation? Or is it just something that is so far removed because it's about 2 incredibly famous people?
I mean, yeah, I tend to say the latter. I think that the reason why this was interesting is because they're big stars. That's the truth of it. Be nice to think that there was some kind of, deeper ramification from it, but I don't think so. Call me cynical.
Cynical. Haha, I did it. I did it.
Georgie, this has all been a bit heavy, hasn't it? I think it's time to lighten up. Should we switch focus?
I'm for it, J-Law. I'm for it. What are you bringing me? What joy are you bringing me?
Look, one of my major passions, as you know, is fashion.
Yes. Oh, right. I know. Every day I see this. I see this, dear listener. Every day I see it.
I mean, look at this blue shirt I'm wearing. I did want to get your take on the Met Gala. I know that you froth on this. So it was on earlier in the week in New York, obviously, the biggest stars on that famous red carpet.
Yes.
The theme this year was Gilded Glamour.
Yes.
Which I don't know whether anyone kind of fulfilled on that theme. We'll have to talk to Anna Winter about that. But tell me, who do you think was best dressed?
Drum roll, please. J-Lo, fashionista. Drum roll. Blake Lively. Hands down. Hands down, she was spectacular, because J-Lo, as you know, being a Met Gala aficionado, People love a reveal. People love a transformation. On the red carpet a few years ago, Lady Gaga had like 4 different looks just as she was walking up the stairs, which isn't that like, I don't know, it's like a 100-meter red carpet. So that's a lot. That's a lot of looks as she's going up the stairs, just taking off different layers, revealing different metamorphoses of what she's wearing. And that's what Blake Lively did. She was in custom Versace. She was in this beautiful like bronze, it almost looked like molten bronze strapless gown with these amazing gloves, and she was walking up the stairs, just posed, like turned around for photographers. And then the bit that I found so fascinating was the transformation and the team of little helpers that ran to her and like undid the bow that she had wrapped around herself, and then it became this incredible aqua train. And my favorite bit was the man who was the glove man, as I've named him, who had to take off those molten bronze gloves super quickly, and then there were like these aqua blue gloves underneath. Like it was like a Sailor Moon transformation when she becomes the Moon Princess. It was just so wonderful. And also, if you haven't seen clips of Ryan Reynolds and his reaction to like watching his wife transform on the red carpet, it's just great because I think it's legit. I think it's candid in a way because he knows he's being photographed, but he's just there with his mouth open, just looking loving, like adoringly at her. So she was my number one. There's a YouTuber that I love called Emma Chamberlain, who I also thought took the theme and made it her own. Hers was really quite nice, very understated midriff little corset number, which I liked. And I have to hand it to Gigi Hadid for this incredible maroon burgundy, like latex corset and pant look, but then this huge puffer jacket in the same color, but huge, which just made me thought that it was like every woman in Toorak who's ever donned a puffer jacket, this was Gigi's ode to them. And I just loved it because she made the puffer chic.
Would you call that glamour? Is a parka glamour?
Usually no. I used to think they were the ugliest things ever, I have to say, parkas. But then I moved somewhere where it was cold and I was like, these are great. These are really warm. These are so functional. And I thought that was the best representation of a functional glamour that you were going to see at somewhere like at the Met Gala. So Gigi Hadid loved. I have to give a dishonourable mention though to a few people. Number one, Kylie Jenner, which I know you'd be across, J-Law.
No, I am. With the backwards hat?
With the hat and like the fascinator with like the weird like fishnet thing on the baseball cap, and she was wearing a T-shirt underneath like this huge like white wedding gown. It just wasn't for me. I know it was in ode to an off-white designer who died recently, but it's just it still doesn't look good. Like I don't care. It could be a lovely commemoration, but it still didn't look good. So I didn't think any of the Kardashians hit the mark, which brings me to a bit of a controversial moment, J-Law. Kim Kardashian lost 7 kilos so that she could fit into Marilyn Monroe's actual dress from the 60s. Very famous, iconic dress. Part of the exhibition that is the Met Gala, the Met Museum. And I just wanted to know, when will we be done glamorizing diet culture, do you think? You may not have any hot takes on this, J-Law, but I found it quite weird that everyone was like, oh my God, did you see she's lost 7 kilos so she could fit into this tiny nightie? And I'm like, she's already tiny. Like, what? What message is that sending?
I don't really have an issue with it. I don't really, what's so bad about that, you know?
Well, I just think that it's just sending a dangerous message, being like, you too can be an absolute Hollywood icon, glamazon, and relive that if you are willing to only eat tomatoes and lose 7 kilos.
Right. And hate yourself.
And hate yourself a little bit because you're going to be hangry. You're going to be hangry. I just think it was possibly the end result. If you didn't know that, you'd be like, oh, yep. But there's like just, if you look into it a bit deeper, I feel like it's just glamorizing, fad diets and stuff, which is, she's in her right to do. She can do that. But just, 13-year-olds that are like, oh, yeah, Kim can do it. I'm just going out to the shops buying like truckloads of tomatoes and tomato juice. I just, the effect that she has on everyday women in particular, I'm just like, oh, I don't know about it. Did she look amazing? Yes. But it just didn't sit well with me. Just didn't sit well with me, that's all.
But I feel like don't the Kardashians eat? Like on their show, they're always eating, aren't they? Like I don't feel like they
They
have
are.
crazy relationships with food.
You're right. They're always eating massive salads. I always see that. And to be fair, this is just me being weird. Every single time I'm watching them and they have, because I don't have a strong affinity with lettuce, but every time I see them eating a salad, I'm like, God, that looks good. Maybe I should eat more salads. I'm like, is that their effect or that I just have never had a tasty salad?
But you're saying, get your laughing gear around a big pizza, Kim. That's what she needs.
Yes, that's
to
what I'm
do.
saying. That's what I'm saying. As a fashionista, J-Law, I would like to know, though, what theme, like pretend it's just a fancy dress theme, but it's like your version of the Met Gala. What would your theme be? What would you have?
What about jumper?
Oh,
Jumper,
yes.
but make it chic. Like sweater, but make it chic. Because I had an
Sweater
ugly
weather.
jumper party for my 30th, and that was a good time. But like,
Well, you
what if
are born in winter, so that helps. I was like,
Indeed.
it's a jumper party. What? No.
Yeah. So like, yeah, chic sweater.
Oh, I
would
don't
you
hate
do?
it. I'm just thinking I would have the perfect ugly jumper to wear to that as well. Like it's one that's just like, your favorite jumper. It's so ugly, but God, I love it. Like my partner's threatened to set it on fire so many times, but I just love it. What would I do? I reckon that I would do like DIY fairy tale. So you can choose whatever fairy tale you want. You can be a villain, you can be a side character, you can be whatever you want, but it's DIY. So you have to do it with like things that you find in a craft shop, like Project Runway, how they have those challenges. That's what I want. That's what I want. Because, you make it a bit hard, a bit difficult. Everyone could wear like a fairy wing or something, but a fairy wing constructed out of, cellophane and like colored tape, that's a whole new thing. So it's like taking primary school crafts that our parents hated doing for us and just elevating it.
Great.
Elevating it to the next level.
I think we've got the makings of a reality show pitch here. Who do we need to talk to? We're here in the
who do we
Foxtel
need to
building.
talk to?
I'll talk to some people.
Surely we can get this off the ground, J-Law.
Yeah.
I mean, we're allowed to talk to each other each week on Flash Drive. We should be able to figure this out.
All right.
Love
My people will talk to your people.
J-Law, that's it. We did it. Another podcast episode done. Possibly one of our best. We are objective parties, so we can say that with absolute authority. But of course, remember to check out Flash, the platform for which we both work, especially during an election campaign. There's so much great content there when it comes to politics, but there's also so much great content from around the world. If you just need a little bit of a break from politics, you need a little bit of Met Gala, you need a little bit of light in your life, check out Flash, more than 25 news channels in the one place. J-Law, so great chatting to you. Will you be back with me next week?
Of course I will.
Oh, God, imagine if you said no. I just thought that. I'd be like, nah. I'd be like, oh, heartbreak.
I will be here. That's a guarantee.
We promise, guys. That is an election promise from J-Law and I that we will fulfill. Thank you so much, J-Law. Chat next week.
See you later.